actually produced a Pong game, and what I'm going to do now is just to recap and go all the way through producing a game, just to remind you of the kind of work that we've done. So what I've done is I've just opened up Scratch, and we have the regular Scratch screen. I'm going to get rid of the cat because we don't want the cat, so I've clicked on the cross, on the scissors, and I've got rid of the cat. We need to create two sprites. If you remember, it's a bat and it's a ball. So I go to Paint New Sprite, which is here, click, and I want a bat, which is a simple rectangle. So I've clicked on the rectangle tool, draw it, simple as that. Okay. I want a ball, same process, click, this time a circle. I want to change the colour, any colour will do. I'm going to colour it blue, draw a small ball. Okay. It's perhaps useful at this stage. You see it's called Sprite 2, and if we come up to here, this sprite location, we can change the name. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to call that ball, click back to the bat, and change that to bat. So if you remember what we wanted to do, we wanted to have the bat moving backwards and forwards in this x-axis, and we want to have the ball bouncing around, and we want to try and keep the ball in the air as long as possible. So the first thing we need to think about is, by clicking on the bat, is how do we get the bat to move when we move the mouse backwards and forwards, left to right. So what do we need? Well, we need to start it, so I'm going to put in this control, so when we click the green flag, that refers up to here, things will start to happen. We're now looking at motion, so I click on motion, and what we want to do is we want to set the X to something. What do we want to set it to? Well, we want to set it to wherever the mouse is going to be. So this time we go to sensing, and we come down to here, and where it says mouse X. So I'll click on mouse X, drag it over, and where it says 0, which would be a grid reference, I'm just going to let go of the mouse. Now we know that we actually want this to keep going. If we just click on this once, for example now, it'll actually just jump off the screen. What I want to be able to do is to keep that going. So again, controls, forever, put it round here, drop that into it, and now when I click the green flag, okay, we can move backwards and forwards, and the red to stop. Now notice what I did there is I actually, instead of going up to the green flag, which I could have done, I was just running this single script. So I could click on it, and now I can run that script. And that's a good tip, and we'll be using that more and more as we go on learning more and more about Scratch. So the next thing we want to do is we want to start working on the ball. And the first thing we need to do is we need to get the ball moving. So again, I'm going to pull in when this control, which is referred to as a hat, when I click the green flag, things will start to happen. What do we want it to do? Well, we want it to move. So I'll bring in a move block, and when it gets to the edge, we wanted it to actually bounce. So I'll bring in that block. I'm going to change that to 6 so it doesn't move quite so far, and again, as usual, we want that to keep going, so I've got a forever loop. So I'll bring that in. If I attach that onto there, put the move in, put on the edge, and if I now click this, it'll move backwards and forwards. Now remember, if we come up to here, if we want to change the angle of this, just click and drag it round a little bit. It'll change the starting angle. So instead of it bouncing left to right, it's now going to follow this angle, and that will make it a bit more exciting. So click on the green flag and it moves around. Later on, as we do more and more, we can see how we can control that automatically from within the game. So stop. Right, what was the next thing we wanted it to do? Well, we obviously want it so when it hits the paddle, it bounces. So again, what elements do we need? Well, we want the green flag to start with. We then want a forever if loop. So we want it to keep going, and I'm looking for ever if. Let's put it into here. Then we need to look at sensing. So I'll click on sensing, and I say, right, forever if it is touching, and what is it going to touch? It's going to, so I've clicked on the little triangle, the bat. What do we want it to do when we've touched the bat? Well, we want it to change direction. So we want it to point in direction, and we've got 90 degrees. Well, we sort of discussed this, and that means when it hits the bat, it would just bounce off at a 90-degree angle, which isn't going to make that very imaginative or very challenging. So we wanted to put something else that was in here. What we wanted to do is we wanted it to bounce off in exactly the same direction as it actually hit the bat with. So if it comes in at this kind of angle, it would hit the bat and bounce off. How do we do that? Well, we bring in an operator, a minus operator. First thing we want to do is we say 180 degrees, and then we want to take from that the direction that it came in. So again, click on the motion blocks, and we are looking for direction, which is here at the bottom. Drag it over and drop it into the second block. So what have we got? Pointing direction, 180 degrees, which is a horizontal line, minus the angle that it comes in, and it will bounce off at the same angle. Click that up to there, and we've now got some options. Wanted to make it a little bit variable, so now instead of just bouncing off at 180 degrees, which will be the same every time with the equal angle, I want to put a little bit of variance in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on move, drag it in, and say when it hits, move away 10, and then I want it to actually rotate. So I want it to change direction. So we could say turn in a particular direction, 15 degrees. Well, again, that's very predictable. So what we can actually do is go to operators and say pick random. So we click on the random, drop that into where it was 15, so that it said 15 degrees, and now it's going to pick a random number, in this case between 1 and 10. Well, we don't want to pick between 1 and 10, that would be 1 degree and then 10 degrees. So it's a very narrow angle that you'll be moving. We want to increase that. So we're going to say minus 22, which means it can bounce off to the left, to plus 22. Because we've kept the numbers quite small, it'll actually always bounce up. If we made them too big, it's possible that it could actually try and move away and then come down. So there we go. So that's now we've got our bat bouncing, and actually we can run the game. Okay, so here we go, the ball's bouncing, we're off, and it works as expected. Finally, what we wanted to do, we want a win condition. At the moment we could keep it up in the air, but if we actually just missed it, let's see if we can do that. If we just missed it, no problem, it would just keep bouncing. What we said we wanted to do is to have a threat, a volcano, I think we talked about it. So we want to have a colour at the bottom, so if we miss it with the paddle, when it hits the colour, the game's over. So let's put a colour at the bottom. So I'm going to click on the stage, backgrounds, and I'm going to click on edit. So there on edit, click on rectangle box, so I'm going to colour it red for danger, and I'm just going to draw that across at the bottom. Okay, so there we go, there's our stage now. I might want to lift that up a little bit. So now we just need to give it some instructions, which says when the ball hits the red, game over. So I've clicked on the ball sprite, we're still in costume, so click on scripts to get the scripts back. So we want a control, bring that in. We want another forever if statement, so we bring this in as well. And we want it forever if it's sensing, we go to touching colour. Remember we want colour as red, so we click on touching colour, drop that in. Now at the moment it's coloured green, so we need to colour it red, so just click on the little green square, you get a droplet or eyedropper, click on the red, and it changes to red. And what do we want it to do then? We want it to stop the game. So if I come down to here, and the very last block in the controls is stop all. And we can run the game. So press green, here's the game. Now remember we talked about how we could make the game more difficult, speed up the ball, make the paddle smaller, etc. But I'm going to play one more, and then I'm going to let it eventually defeat me, and we'll see what happens. Oops. Get the paddle out of the way, game over. So I'll click the flag again and it will start. But watch what happens to the ball. Watch where the ball starts from. it's right on the red. And every time now we can't move it away. So what we need to think about is that when we start the game, instead of having the blue ball here, we actually want it up here. So we want to go to motion, and we want to get the ball to go to a particular location. So I say go to X and Y. X, if I type in 0, that actually is the middle grid. And again, as we move on, we'll look a lot more about the grid. And I know that the Y near the top, it's actually all the way to the top is 180. I'm just going to say 170, so it just doesn't quite start at the top. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to put this in here. Okay. So when we click, the first thing it will do is jump it to the top, and then it'll bring this in. So now what's the game? I'll click on the green. Let's check that it still works. Okay, so it bounces. So I managed to bounce it. Ooh, that's going to take a long time to bounce all the way back. Whilst that's doing that, you can see here that this is actually tracking all the time. So in real time, this is saying what direction is the ball going in, and this is giving it its X and Y's coordinates, and this is giving its direction. Here it comes down to the red. Oh, I've hit it with the ball. Here we go. So I must make sure I miss it this time. I do, and the game stops. But watch what happens now. When I click red again, if I've programmed it correctly, if I've tested it correctly, which I'm doing now, it should go to the top. There we go, it's at the top. And that's it. And that's a recap of the game that we've done. What we're going to go on to look at now is we're going to look at each individual component in a little bit more detail to give you a better understanding so you can create your own games.